Ever wonder where your money goes after you swipe that card? Have you ever stared at your bank account after a purchase, willing the transaction to clear so you can, breathe again? We've all been there. Especially when that purchase involved that fancy new gadget or a night out that might have gone a tad overboard. But what exactly happens behind the scenes when you make a purchase with your Capital One card? Where does your money go, and how long does it take for that transaction to finally reflect in your account balance? Fear not, financially curious friends, because today we're diving deep into the world of Capital One transaction processing times. Now, before we get down to the nitty-gritty, it's important to understand the difference between a pending transaction and a cleared transaction. When you make a purchase, your card goes through an authorization process. This is essentially the store checking with Capital One to make sure you have the funds available. If everything checks out, the transaction goes into a pending state. This means the money is kind of on hold, reserved for the merchant. It won't show up in your available balance yet, but it will be there as a reminder of your recent purchase. Alright, so how long does this pending purgatory last? Well, that depends on the type of transaction you made. For most debit card purchases, things move pretty quickly. Capital One usually processes these electronically, and the funds should be deducted from your account within 2 to 3 business days. Keep in mind, this doesn't necessarily mean the transaction will show as cleared in your account on the same day. There might be a slight delay depending on your bank's processing times. Now, checks are a different story. Deposits made by check take a bit longer to clear because there's a whole verification process involved. Capital One needs to make sure the check is legit and there are sufficient funds in the linked account. Generally, you can expect a check deposit to clear within 2 business days, but it could take up to a week depending on the amount. What about online transfers between accounts? Typically, transfers initiated before 5 p.m. Eastern Time will post to your Capital One account the next business day. However, there might be additional hold times depending on the type of transfer. Now, let's talk about credit card transactions. This is where things can get a little tricky. When you use your Capital One credit card, the authorization process happens just like with a debit card. However, the funds aren't deducted from your account immediately. Instead, the transaction goes into pending mode, and you'll see it reflected on your credit card statement. The actual time it takes for a credit card transaction to clear depends on the merchant. Some merchants might submit the final transaction amount to Capital One right away, while others might take a few days. This is why you might see a pending credit card transaction disappear from your account before the final amount is even posted to your statement. The key takeaway here is that pending transactions, especially for credit cards, can take up to 5 business days to clear completely. So don't panic if you see a purchase you made a few days ago still listed as pending. It's just the system working its magic behind the scenes. Here are some additional things to keep in mind. Weekends and holidays can affect processing times. A transaction made on a Friday might not clear until the following Tuesday. If you're ever unsure about a transaction or its status, the best thing to do is contact Capital One directly. They can look into the specifics and give you a clearer picture of what's going on. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.